Hi everyone. Today we're going to light the wood stove. We've had several questions from people over time about operating a wood stove. One of the first things that you need to learn to do is to get a successful fire going. It's not a majorly difficult thing, except there's different parts of the stove that help create the draft. And if you don't know what those parts are, if your draft's not going, then your fire's not going to take off and you're just going to become frustrated. Each stove is a little different than the other, just like a vehicle. Basically all the same function, but the parts that, like opening the flue, might be different on where it opens on one stove versus on another. We have a flue on this chimney, and we always keep that flue open. We never mess with it. When we close it up, we end up getting a little too much of a smoke smell. So that one stays open all the time. We also have a flue here that is operated by this handle. Now, when you have a handle like that, the flue is open, and you want it open when you start your fire. But after about 5 minutes, once your fire gets going, you want to close that flue back up, because now your chimney is hot enough and it's drawing the smoke up just fine. If you leave that flue open, the chimney gets too hot, and that creates other issues. So the other thing on this particular stove, we have bell drafts. On our old stove, our old Home Comfort, there was a little panel down here, much like this panel here. This panel is simply to clean the ashes out from under the oven. But it was about that size, and there was a little lever on the bottom of it that you'd pull out, and it would raise that panel up. On this, we have two bell drafts. We have one up front, and you open that up to create an airflow. We also have a bell draft on the side. Same premise. It creates an airflow there. We don't very often have to open that one to get the fire going. Once in a while. Usually what we'll do is get the fire all set up and then open up. We even open up the door. The door, you have to be real careful though. You don't want to walk away from it when you open up the door, because you get too much air too fast, and it doesn't take long for the stove to get over hot. So typically we just tell people, do the bell draft until you get comfortable with the stove, if you get this kind of stove. But now for actually starting the fire, for those of you that have done this before, this will just be a no-brainer. But when I first started operating the stove, I hadn't a clue that you needed to have tinder and kindling. That you just don't throw big logs in the firebox and shazam, you've got a good flame going. You got to build your fire, and that's, you hear people of old say, well, I'm going to go build a fire, and that's literally what you have to do, because you start with little things and then build up to larger logs. This is our firebox on the stove. You can feed it from the top, or you can feed it from the front. Right now I've just got the top open to help aid and some light there to see the inside of it. It's so dark in here. I apologize there, that's a little better. No, we haven't had a fire going in the stove. We didn't run a fire all this weekend. We were too busy to be home, so it was quiet and cold here, to say the least. But the ashes, you want a few of the ashes left on the side, but this is too much. You don't get an airflow going. So I've put the gadget here. It turns the grates. There's 3 grates to turn, but I don't need to turn them all. I just want to knock some of the ashes down. As you can see, there's an air. The dark line there means that the ashes are gone. So that air is going to flow from that open door up through there once I get the fire lit. We wrinkle up newspaper for our tinder. Once in a while, we might have some, well, used to be able to dry your ears, but I guess used to we used to save that. Steel wool. I clean the stove with steel wool. And I might throw one piece in there. That sometimes helps if the wood's a little wet. to get it going. I threw in probably about 10 pieces of crinkled up newspaper in there. Our firebox is quite big. It's 18 inches deep, and it's twice the size of our old stove. So now you want your kindling to be nice and small and dry. If you have wet kindling, you're just going to frustrate yourself when lighting the stove. I always tell my husband, he's very meticulous about his kindling, and he builds a little log cabin to make sure all the air gets to where it needs to go. My little log cabin is not quite as neat as my husband's always is, but it still does the job. I've got them crisscrossed and layered over the paper so that the air has an easy flow through it and it doesn't smother itself out. When you light this, and I usually do it this way, I will light more than one spot on the newspaper just to get it flowing. So there's the front, and then as soon as you get it lit, you need to get the top closed because the smoke starts rolling out. Put my draft open. I got to close the door. Once you get that lit, close your firebox door, because then if you're looking at the flame, keeping track of it that way, you impede the airflow. And it just kind of, the paper burns up a little bit, but you don't get a good draft going. And you won't get the fire started. You'll have to start all over. But you kind of listen for it. And then after the kindling's going, then you can check it out and make sure everything's alright and add your wood to it. I don't know if you can hear the fire. It's drawing up, the airflow's drawing up into the chimney like it's supposed to. At this point, now I can close the bottom door a little bit. I usually leave it open until I start to feed it with larger chunks, and I just open the bell draft at that point. Let's check out the fire here. Alright, yeah. Everything took off really well. Now I won't overload it yet because I still can smother it out very easily. But you take some smaller chunks of wood. You don't want to throw in the big logs yet. There's a time for that. And I'll feed one or two this way at this point. And I'll close the door again. Check the chimney. It's been going for about maybe 3 minutes now. Once the chimney gets warm enough to where you touch it and you want to pull your hand away, that means it's got a good draft going. So I will close the draft there, and that's pretty much all there is involved in starting a fire in a wood stove. The important thing is making sure your chimney is hot. You don't impede the airflow by putting too big chunks of wood in at first, trying to smothering it out in that way. And always just if you watch any of our videos, you'll know that we're big about hands-on, and that's how you learn most of this. You'll learn to listen to the sound of your stove. You can pretty much tell, like if we're sitting on the living room, we can tell just by the sound if the draft needs to be closed down, if it's running too hot, or if it's cooling off by the sound that it makes. When you start to cook on it, which we'll do some videos on actual cooking in the oven and on top, that's a lot of how you range, though, how you feed it is by sound. Some of it's smell, because it does develop a certain smell to the metals you'll get familiar with. But hands-on, that's 75% of a lot of things. Some are 50. Some it's just 100. I mean, we had no one to turn to when we were doing this, and it was just, for us, it was hands-on. We made a lot of mistakes, but it taught us. It taught us a lot of things by just doing it. When operating your wood stove, if you're going to use it year-round, you'll learn that operating the drafts will aid in the heat that you receive in the home, that you retain in the home. Right now, it is June 26th here in the state of Michigan, and it is 77 degrees. It's a pleasant 77 outside, but in no way do I want this cranking to produce heat like I do, in the middle of January when the snow's blowing. And, it's minus 10 degrees outside. So I have all the bell drafts shut down. Today, she's got to be used for dishes. I have to have wash water to wash stuff up, and I'm going to have to cook our meals in it today. So after getting her going, I've closed the bell drafts. I got some fair-sized wood in there. You can see it's not a huge roaring fire, but it's warming it up. And when I'm ready to get that oven heated up a little bit, I'll open that bottom bell draft. Just a little, get some more airflow going. What the bell draft will do, besides pushing air through the fire, it also moves the air around the oven. So that'll dictate how much heat I get out of the oven. It's really amazing the function of the stove. In the winter, when it's cold, I want to be able to cook and heat at the same time. Now, granted, it does produce more heat than I want in the summer, but I still can close her down and I'm able to cook. We have the windows open and need to step outside lots of times, with a flushed face, but it's not unbearable. Now, I might say something totally different in August, because August is typically the hottest month, and when canning's full force. But at that point in time, we'll pull the old stove, our old wood stove, out of the garage and can outside in our makeshift summer kitchen.